Okay, so welcome to the digital dye version. Now, you remember that when we first discussed doing this digital dye version, showed you how it was going to work, pressing the button on the hard drive and see what we came up with, and we came up with a Jefferson Airplane album called Feed Your Head. Now, I hadn't done any research at that point, and it transpired that the Jefferson Airplane album Feed Your Head was a sort of a maybe partly unauthorised, maybe authorised, I'm not really sure, live sort of compilation album of tracks that were recorded between 1967 and 1969, mostly at the Winterland in March 1967 and at the Monterey Pop Festival, also with a few studio tracks tagged on the end. So it was a bit of a mishmash. I remember listening to it, I couldn't quite figure out what was going on, so I had to go and look it up and see what it was. A lot of the live stuff has had it sort of, the crowd isn't necessarily obvious. It's an odd album. I'd say it's probably one for completists of Jefferson Airplane only, really, because it's got all the tracks on there. Somebody to Love, White Rabbit, and all those. It's got all the tracks on it, but there are better versions of them elsewhere, and they're better packaged somewhere else. It could be a good introduction, I suppose, if you haven't got any by Jefferson Airplane, but it's one of the 17,000 albums on the hard drive that is probably not going to get played again. I would have thought. It's nothing wrong with it. If you're a Jefferson Airplane fan, you'll probably think it's great. It's just not immediately relevant. There are better versions of the tracks around, but it's one of them things, isn't it? If you see it knocking around cheap anywhere, it's worth picking up. We won't knock it, because Jefferson Airplane were a good band, and of course went right on through the 70s through turning into Jefferson Starship as well, and maybe Jefferson Starship will come up another day. Okay, so the second band to come out on the auto DJ list on the hard drive were New Riders of the Purple Sage. Now, I can remember seeing their albums around when I was younger, on the old second-hand record bins and stuff, and I always thought they were called New Riders of the Purple Saga. I don't know why I thought that. I must have just misread it or something, but not up until probably this week I thought they were called New Riders of the Purple Saga, but they're not. They're called New Riders of the Purple Sage. And I also didn't know, this just shows you, see, people say to me, oh, you know everything about music. No, I don't. I know a little bit. I know a lot about a little bit. A little bit about a lot, but I don't know a lot about everything. And I didn't know until this week either that Jerry Garcia from the Grateful Dead was on their first album, which is the album that's come out, that we're going to have a look at. The very first album from New Riders of the Purple Sage. Now that album, their first album, came out in self-titled, came out in 1971 on Columbia Records, and it got all the way to number 39 in the American album chart. Jerry Garcia was on there playing a lot of pedal steel guitar. Mickey Hart and Commander Cody played drums and piano on a couple of tracks as well. I don't know how well known New Riders of the Purple Sage are over here. I can't say they're a band that I've listened to a lot. As I said earlier, I've seen the albums around, but I've never really listened to a lot. They're all one of those sort of bands that came, West Coast type stuff, I suppose. And fundamentally, of course, New Riders of the Purple Sage are they're an American country rock band, really, and came out of all that San Francisco psychedelic scene and everything, which is where you're going to sort of realise that the Grateful Dead came from and all that lot. So they're an interesting band. I found this album to be highly enjoyable. It's far more sort of psychedelic than country rock, I think. It's well worth a listen, and they're now, to me, it's a sort of band, and this is where the digital thing comes in useful for me, because I've now heard that. I'll keep my eye open. I'll see if I can find some of their stuff on vinyl or maybe even CD, because CD is still worth buying rather than having to play it through digital sources. So that's a good thing about having the digital source. It makes you listen to stuff that you first came across 40 odd years ago, but you never actually got around to listening to. So that was the second one that came out on the list today.
The Man in the Attic.
Hello again from the Man in the Attic. Well, this one's going to be a little bit different. We all have our own kind of musical journeys, those things which mean a lot to us when we're younger, and things which will take us back to a certain point in time, and we can remember it so well. Well, I began collecting records around 1969, 1970, when I was about 12, something like that. And my first big musical love, I suppose, was reggae and ska. Kind of a bit strange maybe for someone who's a big hard rock, Deep Purple fan. He played in rock bands. But yeah, it was my first big musical love. In fact, a few weeks ago, watching TV one night, I was flipping through the channels. I was sitting watching TV on my own, and I saw on Sky Arts was a program called Rude Boy, and it was the story of Trojan Records. Now, Trojan were like the Tamla Motown of reggae, and they put out so much great stuff in the late 60s up until about 74, 75, I think, when they actually folded. I mean, you can still get Trojan stuff now, and I've got several CD box sets, but lurking about in my boxes of records are many old reggae albums. And in fact, some years ago I sold off quite a number of old reggae and ska beat singles, and they went for enormous prices. Collectors were falling over themselves to give me lots of money for them. And again, one of those albums that I would, if I was only to keep 10 to 20 records from my collection, the one that I would have to keep from that era of my life is this one. It's called Tighten Up, Volume 3. It's a compilation album on the wonderful Trojan Records. It's in a kind of die cut sleeve. Look, let's pull it out and we'll see. I mean, and this, when I bought it, which would have been also somewhere like Reading's Records in Clapham Junction Station Approach, way back in the day. This album was actually put out in 1970. There it is in all its glory. Trojan TBL 32B. There's I think on vinyl in total I've got volume 1 to volume 8 of Tighten Up, but this one was a little bit different because it had that die cut sleeve, and it came with this poster that, as you can see, not very politically correct, and probably would be frowned upon now, but this was the kind of music of my youth and school years. In fact, we used to be allowed to get a record player out in our house room at the school I went to in Battersea back in the day. At lunchtime, after school dinner, we could have like about half an hour, and I used to take in 45s and play them, and absolutely loved it reggae music in those days, and I still love it now. As I said when I said my collection is varied and eclectic in some ways. There's a lot of reggae, several CD box sets, replacing some of the stuff that I went and I mean, then this kicks off. You can see the track listing. That's side 1, As you can see, it kicks off with the amazing Monkey Man by Toots and the Maytals. Shocks of the Mighty from the Upsetters, Freedom Street by Ken Booth, Raining in My Heart by Dandy Livingstone, or Dandy, it was just called Dandy in those days, The Man from Carolina by the GG All-Stars, and Leaving Rome by Jojo Bennett. Eternally great tunes. If you know anything about this stuff, you would know these tunes. Side 2, Singer Man from the Kingstonians, Suffering from Jimmy Cliff, Herbsman Reggae by King Stitt, He's Got Barbed Wire in His Underpants from Nora Dean, Stay a Little Bit Longer by Delano Stewart, and Queen of the World from Lloyd and Claudette. They put out so many of these kind of compilations. Tighten Up Volume 2 is the one that most people regard as the one that everybody had, but it's always been volume 3 for me, the Tighten Up series. Loved it. Great artists, these people, the Kingstonians, Jimmy Cliff, eternally great. Jimmy Cliff made one of my favourite all-time singles, and The Harder They Come, when he was on Ireland. And I just love this stuff, and if I put it on now, it takes me back to when I was like 13, 14, and those house room sessions at lunchtime. Brilliant stuff. I love it. And in fact, I might slam this on a little bit later. Great stuff. I highly recommend anything from that kind of classic era of Trojan, anything from about 68 up until about 1973, 75 at a push. This album came out in 1970, so it is now 53 years old. Oh my goodness me, where did that time go? And I think when I bought this album, they used to have two kind of prices for these compilations. There was this, and there was Reggae Chartbusters, and often some of the tracks were interchangeable. And you would pay. They would either be, was it 14 and 11, or 19 shillings and sixpence, something like that. They were under a quid, and this was of course in pre-decimalisation days. So look up some of this stuff. Any of these great what they would have called it skinhead reggae at the time. And yes, I did have the Crop and the Levi's and the Ben Shermans, the whole thing. And then about 4 or 5 years later, I've got Hair Down to Here, and I'm thrashing about on a drum kit. So but this stuff is part of my musical youth, my musical growing up, me cutting my teeth musically. But I was listening to stuff like this along with my brother's collection of things like Led Zeppelin and Wishbone Ash. So yeah, always a very mixed bag in my world. So that's me for this episode of Crush Custard.
And the third one that came out today is this is the sort of thing that I wanted to go. This is what I want to do. The digital diversion. Not a lot of people say, no, this is supposed to be about physical product. It's about records. It's about CDs. It's about whatever. It's not. It's about music. We're going to go out and do some live stuff if we can. The reason that I want to talk about some stuff that's on the hard drive is because of albums like this. Because this is an album. This next one it's called Recto Verso. Now I'm hoping very much that by the time this goes out to it, I'll have figured out how to do that little putting a picture in a box, and there'll be a little picture up there of the album cover, and you'll be able to see it. It's called Recto Verso, and it's by a lady called Zaz. She's a French singer-songwriter. Her real name is Isabelle Giffroy. Now, she's a sort of a jazzy, soul, artistic French variety pop sort of. They like to call it chanson, don't they, in France? And it's like French pop music, but it's a little bit more than French pop music because it's got that sort of feel about being sat outside a French cafe with a glass of wine and a bit of cheese or whatever. And it's fun. Now, I have to admit, I have got a little bit of an addiction to French female singers. I just like them. I just think that the language works well with the with singing. I've got a lot of French, but I do listen to this. This is the thing. People go, "Oh, this is just something that's on your radar." No, this is one. This is why I'm glad this has come up, because I do listen to it. I'm sure if any of my neighbours are going by some days, they must think, "What on earth is he listening to?" Because I play like Francois Hardy and people like that all the time. And then when I was looking to get all these people like Zaz, Isabelle Giffroy, you play the first 3 tracks on this album, right? The first 3 tracks on this album, you will feel in such a good mood after you listen to those first 3 tracks. You don't even mind that the football your team support is probably the worst team in the country at the minute. It doesn't matter anymore because you're in a good mood. And that's what this sort of stuff does to you. And I'm going to put a link in for this to try and get you to listen to it, because I don't think this has ever been released in Britain. I'll be amazed if anybody in England's got a copy of this. I'll be amazed if anybody in America's got a copy of it. If there's anybody from France watching, you may have a copy of it. Zaz Recto Verso from 2013. Now you go and listen to the first 3 or 4 tracks. Even if you don't listen to anyone, just listen to them. Especially tracks 2 and 3, which is Comme Si, Comme Ça, and then Gamine. Brilliant tracks. And it's just easily accessible. It doesn't matter that you might be English or whatever and can't understand what she's singing about. It doesn't matter, because it's just great tunes and great hooks and stuff. And I can say to people, open your ears and your minds to other country's music and other language stuff. If this was an English, if this album was in English and it was released in England, it would have probably been a multi-million seller. Everybody would have gone, how brilliant it is. It's a great album. Try and have a listen to it. Hopefully there'll be a link to it on YouTube and I can put it up. But if you don't listen to anything else of it, listen to Comme Si, Comme Ça, and listen to Gamine. And I will tell you that I've got a stack of this stuff. I must have, because I made a point. I made a point of looking through it all to make sure that I'd got some things I wanted, and I got some extras as well. French singers, French female singers, I just think they're brilliant. And Zaz is a really good one. And I think if you like female vocals and you like pop music and you like good sort of feel good music, you'll like this. So give it a go.
Thanks for watching. Please consider pressing the like, notification and subscribe buttons.